Alright, welcome back. I am Dan Stapleton, and this is Homeworld Deserts of Kharak. I'm still here with Rob Cunningham, CEO of Blackbird Interactive, and Rory McGuire, who's the lead designer for this pretty cool looking game.
Hey guys.
So this is a late game mission, right?
That's right. This is a little bit further into the campaign. At this point, the player has unlocked several units, and one of the key elements is we've started to build into our aircraft hangar. So we're going to see some cool strike fighter and bombers.
All right.
So one of the cool things about this map, it's a super huge map, like 25, 30 kilometers across, is that the entire map is playable area. So that those huge dunes in the distance there are all drivable. You can get your guys up and over them. There's terrain filtering for the different classes of units, so the carrier can't get up on that hill, but the little guys can. And is a good example of how much we wanted to innovate on the terrain of the game. So we really wanted the player to get a sense of true scale, and it was very much inspired by Google Earth, so that you really felt like you were in a real place and it wasn't just stamped out terrain elements.
Yeah, I mean, literally everything we can see here is interactive. So I'm going to grab these guys, and I'm just going to pick this mountain in the distance and give them an order, and we're going to kind of follow them up there.
Yeah, it really does give you a good indication of the scale of those mountains, because I was a big fan of Supreme Commander, and that game has elevation, but it doesn't do a very good job of showing it off, because it doesn't lock the camera on a top-down view, but it's pretty close, and it's hard to play it from any other perspective. But this looks like it gives you the freedom to really understand what's going on.
Yeah,
absolutely. And the environments themselves are massive. Like this dune right here. We get out into Sensors Manager, we can see this environment. That's this right here. So just to get a sense of that environment, it's huge. It's
totally.
about 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers by 25 kilometers.
And this is the Sensors Manager is 3D as well, so you can actually tilt it down and see the scale. Like you can zoom in a little bit there and like see the size and shapes of the landscape right there in the Sensors Manager.
And I can also read the terrain a little bit better if I need to know what's going on there.
And it's important to note here also that the terrain height advantage mechanism we have is totally analog, so it's not just a layered terrain where it's layered like low, medium, high or something. It's actually completely integrated, so you can get really micro with setting up ambushes and really using the terrain to your advantage.
Can you give waypoints?
You sure can, yeah.
Nice, yeah.
You can see those little white symbols next to the guys. That's the veterancy. So like Homeworld 1 and 2, there's a persistent fleet throughout the campaign, and you can maintain your same unit. So those guys are getting experience, and when they become veterans, they have a combat advantage.
Do you have? Because I remember in Homeworld 1 and I think 2, you could get into some pretty gnarly situations where you had lost all your units in the previous mission. I guess it scaled a little bit dynamically, but you could still be in a pretty bad shape. Do you have anything in this game that prevents you from kind of screwing yourself?
If you ever get into a position where you absolutely cannot continue, we do have some mechanisms that allows you to kind of pick up a default fleet, but it's going to set you back quite a bit.
Right.
But that sense that you're talking about, it is tough, but that sense of desperation and that sense of meaning in terms of what your fleet is doing and the losses that you've incurred is really part of the emotional tone of Homeworld, and so we wanted to capture that, and we want the player to feel like every combat was meaningful, and you could lose your fleet if you made bad decisions.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I love that mechanic in Homeworld.
Awesome. You can see Rory using the power shunting mechanism here. Maybe tell us a little bit about that, Rory.
Yeah, so the carrier, as we were talking about earlier in the last video, is really kind of a mobile battleship carrier support unit. It's capable of really anything. And over the course of the campaign, as we're securing technologies in the desert, we're going to gain power, and that power is going to allow us to shunt into these different systems. So here I can turn these systems off, my weapons, and then bring on repair systems and armor, which basically turns my carrier into a tank that can heal the nearby fleet. Or we can pull it out of here, we can put it back into weapons, and this is going to be its very short range but high damage. Or I can leave it there and go for long range, low damage. So how you distribute your power is really a key part of the carrier. Also in positioning as well. It acts as a resource unit in that these guys can return back to it. And then it's also your production and research line. So the carrier is really an essential, almost hero unit in the game.
all that power management is like it's like out of X-Wing. I'm gonna keep referencing
Yeah.
the old games.
In addition, there's a heat mechanism in the game where, as you get deeper into the desert, things get hotter, and you have to manage your power systems on the carrier to also maintain a good cooling level. So it can overheat.
One of the coolest things the carrier can do is it can also launch air units. So I'm going to go ahead and call in some sorties here.
Oh yeah,
and we can actually see these guys taking off on the deck here. And that's our bomber unit taking off there. And these guys are occupied inside the carrier. There's a hangar that they occupy. And by calling in airstrikes, we can call in these massive kind of ordnance calls. They're going to fly in. There is anti-air units that can take them down, and some ground units can affect them. But they're going to absolutely devastate anything that they hit.
So you're not actually controlling those fighters in the same way you control a ground unit. You're just designating a target.
So I am doing that here. However, I can also grab it at any point, and I can give it a new order.
Nice.
So I can control it like a ground unit if I like.
Yeah.
I can also recall all my air units from the Capisi as well if they're in danger. So we've given you a good amount of control over how you want to control these guys.
You can also set them up in holding patterns to just do loops in the sky until you're ready to strike. So a good strategy is to get a bunch of guys in a holding pattern, looping around just off to the side of a battle, and then right at the right moment, bring them in right when you're ready with your ground forces.
So these tanks that are on the ground, are those the equivalent of like a frigate, or how would they?
Yeah,
line
so the
up?
Homeworld analog is pretty similar. You've got your light attack craft, which are kind of like your fighters, and you've got your assault vehicles, which are sort of like your corvettes, and then the rail guns, and and base runners are sort of like your frigates, I guess, and then you've got your cruisers as well, moving up into the super capital class analog from Homeworld. And you've got your repair vehicles as well, and of course the resourcing. Resources and resource controllers as well.
And those all pop out of the. Sorry, it's not a mothership. But
The
it's
carrier.
Carrier.
Yeah,
right?
the carrier.
They all pop out of that just like they do in Homeworld.
Yeah, totally.
That's right.
There's a huge door in the back that they all come rolling out of.
What about the resource economy? Does that work similar to Homeworld, or is that different?
That's a little bit different. It's similar, but it's a little bit different. There's two resources in Deserts of Kharak. You've got your CUs, or construction units. There comes a bomber into land. I just love this. This is my favorite.
Nice little shake as it lands.
Yeah, and then he's going inside. Okay, that's totally distracting. And then you've also got your resource units, which are sort of higher end resources with more technology. So up in the top right, you can see the orange and blue triangles that represent the construction and resource units respectively. There's also artifacts in the single player campaign and multiplayer as well that Rory can talk a little bit more about that are really important for special technology, advancing the upgrades of the carrier and so forth in the campaign. And it's a mode in multiplayer as well.
Yeah, and in multiplayer, we wanted to honor the themes and the kind of narrative tone of the campaign. So we are building kind of classic RTS modes in Annihilation, but we're also building a mode that is unique to Deserts of Kharak, which we call Artifact Retrieval. And Artifact Retrieval is, over the course of a map, some of which are as large as this, roughly 25k by 25k, there'll be artifacts that spawn, and your team has to secure those artifacts and extract them. And if you successfully do that, that's the main source of power in multiplayer. So by doing that, you gain more power and your carrier becomes tougher. However, there's a really interesting dynamic that develops as we have multiple artifacts surfacing on the map. The play dynamics really change, and it becomes really mobile. So that what you think of as map control in other RTSs is really fluid and dynamic in Deserts of Kharak.
Yeah, it's actually worth continuing that point and mentioning that, much like Homeworld, there isn't any like base building. There's no buildings to build and stuff, but there are fixed assets that can be deployed. So he's got a base runner right there. So maybe Rory, could you show us what it looks like to deploy a few assets?
Yeah, I'll just
Maybe
drop
getting
the
close so
turret
we can
there.
see them coming out. So here's a base runner deploying, I think, a turret.
Yeah, I just dropped a turret out.
Huh.
So there's a turret, and then that guy's going to sit there and defend a local area. And then that base runner can go off and drop some more assets around. I think you could get down either another turret or a sensor post, which gives you some more visibility on the map.
And they also have smaller ships that some of them can deploy. So this guy, for example, he can deploy a probe, which will take off.
The
from
little
base runner.
aircraft flies off the top of him.
Yeah.
You can also drop mines. And right now Rory's in what we call glass mode, so it switches off all the elements, the UI elements in the game, so you can just look just at the art of the game if you want.
It is a pretty game. What about like map terrain variety? I mean, obviously it's called Deserts of Kharak, so you're not going to be out in like the tropics or anything like that.
Yeah.
But how do you keep it looking, visually distinct as you progress?
There's a couple of things we used for that. Besides just the type of terrain, so we got canyons and rocky terrain as well as sandy and sort of dunescape terrain. We also played with the time of day, so there's night missions, morning, sunset, afternoon, and also different weather conditions. So sometimes you're in sandstorms, sometimes there are these big sand tornadoes coming. And we tried our best to keep the variety happening and the visual interest happening across the map, across the campaign. Sorry.
I'm going to go ahead and actually jump into another map so we can see a little bit of that variety.
Let's do
You
it.
can get a sense of that. So here we are a bit later in the campaign. This is when you're being resupplied by one of the big lander transports. So this dude's running out of fuel and he's desperate to land, and there's only one place in the desert to land, and that's where you are, on this giant plateau of rock.
So the player has secured this position, and now Gaussian forces are really starting to converge. They smell blood. So this is, as Rob said, is a little bit further into the campaign, and we've got some really cool units to show off here and some pretty large-scale fleet battles.
So here you see one of those fleet intelligence objective events. Here we can see the landing strip that we're going to land on. We've got to hold this landing strip for the big lander that's coming in.
We've also
Show
got
us what we got here,
a
yeah.
number of late-game units. So these are one of our cruiser-class vehicles. This is the artillery cruiser. And these guys can shoot roughly 5 kilometers, 5.5 kilometers. And they fire these massive parabolic arcs that are just a real joy to watch. These are our battle cruisers, really tough, armored, tanky unit that just is the vanguard on any attack.
So these would be your super capital with destroyers and cruisers from Homeworld.
So what, in multiplayer, what would be a defense against artillery?
There's lots of defenses. One is the artillery takes a little bit to fire, and you have to lead your target. So one thing is to anticipate that and dodge it. So in many ways, it's like a skill shot, basically. Alternatively, there's other unit counters as well. Fast-moving units are going to get in on artillery cruisers and really wreck them. And then long-range units like, or long-range fast units like our various aircraft are also going to give them a lot of problems. So the way we approach balance in multiplayer is it's really great if units feel overpowered in certain circumstances, and you balance assuming that all of those units are going to feel overpowered against each other. And it's best when a unit is a real joy to use, not be really soft against a number of things.
If everyone's overpowered, then no one is.
Exactly.
Support ready.
Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and fire some airstrikes here.
Awesome.
Set for launch.
So this mission is a holdout against waves of attackers?
That's right.
That's
so
right.
we've got, right now we're trying to hold this position. We've got Gaussian coming in, so I'm going to send in these strike fighters and bombers and kind of see what we're up against. They should show us a couple of targets here. These guys here in the distance. Go ahead and grab that guy and send him over there. Send him here. And then we've got a number of defenses up here on the plateau that we can repair as well, so I'm going to get those going.
Those are more the deployable turrets?
Deployable turrets, mines, we've got Gaussian turrets that we've acquired here, so I'm going to use those as well. Let's get these guys up here.
Do you have the same capture mechanic as Homeworld? Where you have a couple workers go up and grab something and take it back to your...
We have something similar, but we don't actually want to reveal that yet. It's a secret of the campaign. It's something that you'll unlock over the course of the campaign, and it's quite cool.
Good, because I used that a lot.
Yeah.
Half the time my
one.
fleet was an entirely captured fleet.
Yeah. It's the multi-beam frigate exploit.
Yep.
So
those are your airstrike reticules.
Yeah, I've called in some airstrikes here. We should see those guys start to come in. And this is our first wave of attacking Gaussian units.
Some pretty explosions.
Hostile production cruiser verified. Take it out. Hostile detected. Visual unconfirmed.
We should start to see these massive fleet start to see the artillery cruiser coming in. See these big arcs coming up there. And as I said, they'll take a little bit to hit the target, so you have to predict where your opponent's going to be.
All right.
Hostile armor eliminated. Galcian aircraft inbound. Group 1 lost. Deploy anti-air.
So in multiplayer, you're talking about a team-based mode. How many players are on a team?
We're supporting up to 6 players, so 3 on 3. But free for all, you could go 6 players against each other as well if you so choose.
And that's not class-based or anything. Everyone is on equal footing.
Yes, though you can develop and specialize your fleet over the course of the campaign, or over the course of the mission. I'm sorry.
Alert. Missile battery destroyed. Armored vehicle lost.
So yeah, my army is definitely wrecking these guys.
Hostile light attack
beating
vehicle
them.
detected.
You can see some of these long-range Galcian units at the back.
Alert. Sensor post destroyed.
Excellent.
So I see all the destroyed units are leaving debris. Can that be salvaged?
It cannot, no. But we do have a massive visual history of any battle. I mean, you'll have hundreds of these carcasses start to pile up.
Do they create an obstruction for any units?
No, they don't.
Okay. I assume you're gonna get attacks from all sides here.
Yeah, we've got multiple engagements coming in here. We've got 4 different groups. I'm going to pull these guys back.
Authentication pending. New coordinates verified. Make ready.
And
You should throw down a
actually,
cruise missile
that's what I
strike.
was just thinking the same thing. So we're pretty late in the game, so we've got a number of goodies, one of which is the cruise missile. So we can't use this too often, but it's the perfect solution right now. So
Missile away.
let's see. Oh, there it goes.
Nice.
We've got a salvager under fire.
And it laid a beating on it.
Yeah,
Nice.
that took care of those
It's
guys.
an absolutely brutal weapon.
Destroy. Moving.
Is that the most? Like, do you have any nukes, or is that the biggest bomb you got?
It's one of the bigger ones. There is one a little later in the campaign which absolutely blows that away, but we can't reveal it this time. It's pretty cool though.
Enemy light attack vehicle march on approach.
There's that artillery.
A sentry
Oh, yeah.
post taking fire.
It's a sight to be feared. As soon as you see those artillery shots start to go up, better start panicking.
Enemy railgun
So
was
performance-wise, like we're seeing a little bit of chunk here, but I guess you're running off a laptop, right?
That's right.
What's the system the recommended specs to get a good experience on this?
I don't recall off the top of my head, but they are listed on our Steam page. Yeah, and those are up to date.
Runner, go ahead. Copy. Moving out. Set new
It's a
heading.
very pretty game.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
The Sedim are approaching.
Right.
Prepare to rendezvous.
I do love the Homeworld art style. That's a very distinctive classic look.
Right on.
Enemy
So yeah, so I think we'll wrap it there for this mission. Otherwise, we'll be getting into some story reveals.
All right, well that is a good place to
And,
cut it off then.
That's probably a
But,
good place to cut it off. We'll just see these guys die. Oh! Don't see them die.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
But Homeworld Sands of Kharak is coming out on the 20th. Is that right?
Deserts of Kharak.
Oh, I always do that. It's a very sandy game. Deserts of Kharak is coming out on January 20th, and we'll have a review up on IGN as soon as we can. We'll probably want to test out some of that multiplayer action.
railgun eliminated.
But for much more on all things Homeworld, stick with IGN. And thank you guys.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks,
guys.
Dan.